John, how are you doing?
Robert Kiyosaki, how are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me on your program.
Yeah, the man that needs no introduction. Obviously got your big fame when you wrote the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And now you have a new book coming out called Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. Why are the rich getting richer?
Well, number one is why the rich are getting richer is graduate school from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But number one, today people know that savings gets you nothing. It's now with negative interest rates on savings, and people are still saving money. But the big reason is because debt and taxes are the single largest expense for most people. But for people like myself and President Trump, debt and taxes are our largest source of income. And I know that's not fair, but if you can think about it this way, if you could make millions of dollars and pay no tax, how far ahead are you in life? And today, the younger generation, coming out of school with student loan debt and all this, they're strapped. I feel for them. It disturbs me, so that's why I keep writing. And that's why I wrote Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, because if you're a passive person, don't read the book. But if you're proactive and you want to get ahead, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer will give you some insights into debt and taxes and savings.
And one thing that you've been an advocate for over the years, as I've followed you and read your material, is financial education, which it seems like a no-brainer that basic financial education would be taught in school, but it's not.
No.
Have you made any progress on that, and where are we now?
Yeah, I'm very happy to say there are a number of school teachers who are the rebels over the system. They have their students read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I'm very grateful for them. But as you know, the education system, especially in your state, is very heavily unionized. And my poor dad, Stanford PhD and all this stuff, was head of the teachers union. And their mindset is different than a mindset like President Trump and I. So there is just a differential and clash of the way we see the world. So that's why for individuals and parents, I'm not saying the school teachers are bad, but they're just protecting their jobs and their income. If you want real financial education, our school system will probably never deliver it. So that's why I keep writing.
Yeah, and another thing about our state and the mindset and just kind of the Democratic Party in general is that they do like to brand themselves as kind of the party for the downtrodden. Yet during Obama's 2 terms, the rich getting richer, that problem increased significantly. Why did that happen when you would think the opposite would happen?
Well, there's many reasons for that. One of them is globalization. Other one's artificial intelligence. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and driving around my office is the Google car without a driver in it. That should tell you something. But the school system is obsolete. That's really the biggest problem. Look at President Obama. I'm not Republican or Democrat. Trump is my friend. I disagree with a lot of what he has to say. Yet Obama paid 30% in taxes and Trump paid 0. Now, that tells you a different point of view. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it's very unfair. But what's unfair is an academic system, a school system, that is obsolete and still telling you to pay more taxes. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense.
And you said that you're not a Republican or a Democrat, but you are friends with Trump. And if my research is right, you did endorse him. And since he's been elected, I mean, the day that he got elected, the stock market jumped up significantly, and it's never really looked back. Unemployment's down, minority unemployment's down. Basically, all of the financial numbers are looking better. Do you like where things are going and what he's doing, or would you do things differently?
Well, again, he and I were friends prior to becoming president, and we spoke and we wrote 2 books together as advocates for financial education. So that's why I support him, because he's actually an advocate for different type of education. But everybody says the economy is getting better, but it seems to me people's lives aren't getting better. That wages still haven't gone up. They keep increasing taxes, but the greatest concern is the national debt keeps going up. I don't think that can sustain. That's my concern. So it's nothing, Trump is a good man, but he's not Superman. And that's why
Has he been doing anything to address the national debt?
Well, they have to raise the debt ceiling, which makes it worse. And he's increasing military spending, which makes it worse. So I'm not saying that he's right or wrong. I'm saying you and I, as average citizens, we need to protect ourselves. And that's why I wrote Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, so at least you'll have some idea, because you don't really need a tax cut in America, because America is really a tax haven if you have the right financial education like President Trump and I have. Now, if you're passive, don't read the book. But if you're proactive and you really don't want to pay that much in tax, then Why the Rich Are Getting Richer could enlighten you. You know, it might say, oh, that's how they're doing it.
Speaking of taxes, are you a fan of the current tax bill that's being proposed by Republicans? Do you think that'll help this problem? Do you think it won't make a difference? What are your views on what you've seen from that so far?
I feel for the middle class. I feel for anybody who's working for money, because taxes are your single largest expense. See, debt and taxes, let me say it again, debt and taxes make the poor and middle class poor, and ironically, debt and taxes make people like President Trump and I richer. So that's why I wrote Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, so you can read both sides and maybe make better decisions for your own life. That's why I write. I'm not advising anybody on anything. I'm not saying support Trump or don't support him or support the next guy. I'm saying we all need more financial education, but most people are passive, so they'll keep getting taxed.
A lot of people that are opponents of Trump, or the media, which sometimes can be the same thing, say that he's a racist and that his policies are reflected in that. Knowing him personally, what do you think about that claim?
I would disagree with that entirely. And the thing I'm really, you know, John, I appreciate you being open to this whole thing. It's what's tragic today is the fighting amongst Americans. And it's so high we can't get anything done. And that's what I'm most concerned about. We're at stalemate, we're at checkmate. You know, we can't pass anything. So nothing's changing except the debt gets higher. And that's
definitely
tragic. It's tragic.
One thing I've heard you talk about as far as like being a negative on the economy and increasing this problem with the rich getting richer is the printing of money. When Bernanke was doing that and Greenspan before him, and just continuing to do that to help puff up the stock market. Do you think Keynesian economics is the problem as far as like both parties are buying into the fact that, or buying into the theory that you can just continually stimulate the economy by spending and putting ourselves in debt? Do you think that's the overall problem that's leading to this?
That's a very significant part of the program, or the problem, is back in 1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard, we started printing money. And John, the problem is today everybody's printing money. I was just in Japan, and they're still saying we're accommodative, which means we're printing money. I was just in China, they're still printing money. And Americans, we're still printing money, and Americans are still saying to their kids, save money when we have negative interest rates. Does that make sense to you? If that makes sense to you, then keep doing what you're doing. But I wrote Why the Rich Are Getting Richer because debt is at all-time low in price. You know, I can borrow now at 2%, but debt makes me richer, but debt makes everybody else poor. That's the tragedy.
And since around 2002, you've been predicting a big collapse around 2016, 2017. Do you still see that happening?
Yeah, the only reason it didn't collapse was because of printed money. So, John, you know, I thank you for the time. I need to run to the next one, but I really appreciate your very thought-out questions. I appreciate it.
Robert, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.